For decades, Gladys Knight's voice poured heartbreak, healing, and hope into every soulful note, earning her the crown as the Empress of Soul. But behind the velvet vocals and 7 Grammy Awards was a woman carrying a secret she's only now ready to share. At 81, with a legacy that spans generations and reshaped the sound of soul itself, Gladys isn't just reflecting. She's finally telling the truth. And when she revealed who truly held the deepest corner of her heart, fans were stunned. It wasn't one of her husbands. It wasn't even a fellow Motown legend. No, this love ran deeper, lasted longer, and left an imprint on her soul that no wedding ring ever could. So who captured the Empress of Soul's hearts? Join us as we journey into Gladys Knight's love life, the rise of the Empress of Soul. Gladys Knight's story starts right in the heart of Atlanta, Georgia, where she was born on May 28, 1944, to Sarah Elizabeth and Merrill Woodlow Knight Sr. Her mom worked as a nurse's aide, and her dad was a postal worker. Nothing too flashy, but theirs was a house filled with music. Both of her parents sang in their church choir and a local singing group, so it's safe to say that music ran deep in the family's roots. Gladys wasn't just any little girl in church. By the age of 4, she was already belting out gospel hymns at Mount Moriah Baptist Church. That voice? It was special. Even at such a young age, people took notice. And by the time she turned 8, she wowed the nation by winning Ted Mack's The Original Amateur Hour with her rendition of Nat King Cole's Too Young. That win was the spark, and it didn't take long for things to snowball from there. It all kicked off during her brother Bubba's 10th birthday party. A record player broke down mid-celebration, and the kids had to entertain the guests themselves. So Gladys, Bubba, her sister Brenda, and their cousins Eleanor and William Guest took the stage, the living room, and put on a show. That one spontaneous performance was all it took. Their mothers saw something magical and encouraged them to keep going. Not long after, they officially formed a group. The name? The Pips. A sweet nod to their cousin and early manager, James "Pip" Woods. From there, the Pips started making the rounds. They performed at churches, talent shows, and small clubs, often opening for bigger names. Then, in 1957, they landed their first record deal with Brunswick Records. Gladys was only 13, but the group had already started releasing singles. Of course, the lineup shifted a bit in those early years, but the core was solid, and so was the talent. By the time she was just 16, Gladys Knight and the Pips dropped their debut album. She had already recorded 5 songs and scored her first major hit with Every Beat of My Heart. That song made waves, climbing the charts and earning the group national attention. But just when things were heating up, Gladys did something unexpected. She stepped away from the spotlight. She left the group temporarily to focus on something else entirely: her family. At that time, she married musician Jimmy Newman and decided to start a new chapter as a wife and mother. It was a bold move, especially in the middle of a rising music career. But Gladys had always marched to the beat of her own drum. Still, the call of the stage was too strong to ignore for long. Once she returned, the group picked up right where they left off and kept soaring. As for her schooling, Gladys attended the historic Booker T. Washington High School in Atlanta, a place known for nurturing Black excellence. She later transferred to and graduated from Archer High School, managing to balance her education with her fast-moving music career. So before the world knew her as the Empress of Soul, before the Grammys and the gold records, before the standing ovations and presidential honors, Gladys Knight was just a little girl in Atlanta with a big voice and an even bigger dream. And thanks to a broken record player, a birthday party performance, and a whole lot of family support, that dream found its way to the stage. Gladys Knight's remarkable career. Gladys Knight's journey through music, movies, and even a few surprising TV cameos is nothing short of legendary. She didn't just rise to fame, she soared, evolved, and kept us hooked for decades. And her story? Oh, it's as juicy, layered, and soulful as the music she's known for. Let's rewind to 1966. Gladys Knight and the Pips had a few hits under their belt: Every Beat of My Heart, Giving Up, and Letter Full of Tears, but they were far from being Motown's golden children. In fact, when they joined the Motown roster, they were considered a second-string act, but that didn't last long. Gladys and the Pips hit the ground running, and suddenly the underdogs were topping charts. I Heard It Through the Grapevine. Yes, the same song Marvin Gaye later made famous. Hit number 1 in 1967. Then came a string of hits: The Nitty Gritty, Friendship Train, If I Were Your Woman, and the Grammy-winning Neither One of Us Wants to Be the First to Say Goodbye. One of the standout moments during their Motown years? Touring with Diana Ross and the Supremes, until Gladys's show-stopping performances reportedly rubbed Ross the wrong way. Gladys claimed Ross had her kicked off the tour because the crowd loved her too much. Even Motown boss Berry Gordy allegedly admitted she was giving his star act a run for her money. By 1973, Gladys and the Pips had outgrown Motown. They jumped ship to Buddha Records for a better deal, and that move paid off in a big way. That same year, they dropped what would become their most iconic hit, Midnight Train to Georgia. It was a monster hit, reaching number 1 on both the pop and R&B charts and winning them a Grammy. More hits followed: I've Got to Use My Imagination, Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me, and their stunning medley, The Way We Were, Try to Remember. They also tapped into Hollywood, recording the soundtrack for the film Claudine with Curtis Mayfield in 1974. It was full of soulful gold like On and On, The Makings of You, and Make Yours a Happy Home. While they were racking up accolades in the US, Europe, especially the UK, was falling in love with them too. Midnight Train to Georgia didn't chart high in Britain until 1976, 3 years after its US success. But when it hit, it hit. By the late 70s, things got complicated. Legal issues forced the group to record separately, giving Gladys a chance to test out the solo waters. She dropped 2 solo albums, Miss Gladys Knight and Gladys Knight, while still technically with the group. Around this time, her personal life was a whirlwind. She divorced her first husband, musician Jimmy Newman, in 1973. Then she married Barry Hankerson, a rising political insider and future music executive. They had a son, Shanga Ali, but their marriage ended in a messy custody battle that kept tabloids busy. In 1980, the band were back together, reunited, revamped, and signed to Columbia Records. They brought in Motown royalty, Nicholas Ashford, and Valerie Simpson to produce their comeback albums about love, featuring the hit Landlord and Touch. But it wasn't until 1983 that they really made a splash again. Save the Overtime, For Me, produced by Leon Silvers III, had that sleek boogie flair with a touch of hip-hop influence. It wasn't a massive pop hit, but it topped the R&B chart, their first number 1 R&B single since 1974. Still, Gladys was itching to fly solo. In 1987, the group released their final album together, All Our Love. Its lead single, Love Overboard, was an instant classic, another R&B chart topper, and Grammy winner. After one last victory lap tour in 1988, the Pips gracefully bowed out, and Gladys stepped fully into her solo era. By this point, she wasn't just an R&B icon, she was a full-blown entertainer. In 1976, she starred in the film Pipe Dreams, which earned her a Golden Globe nomination for New Star of the Year. It was the beginning of a quiet but steady acting career. She had small roles in movies like Hollywood Homicide and I Can Do Bad All by Myself, and lent her voice and presence to TV throughout the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. She even got her own short-lived variety show in 1975, The Gladys Knight and the Pips Show, and made guest appearances on beloved series like The Jeffersons, A Different World, Living Single, and The Jamie Foxx Show. She co-starred in Charlie & Co's in the mid-80s and later popped up in Jag Las Vegas, 30 Rock, and Hawaii 5-0. Tyler Perry loved her too. She guested on House of Pain and Star, and brought her classic voice to the big screen in one of his early movies. And don't forget her reality TV moment. In 2012, she joined Dancing with the Stars. dazzling viewers. She didn't win, the applause was always hers. In 2019, she reintroduced herself to a new generation on The Masked Singer, stunning everyone when she was revealed as B. Week after week, she slayed hits like Chandelier, Wrecking Ball, and I Can't Make You Love Me, finishing third overall. But the crown? She never needed it. Gladys Knight had already earned her place in music royalty. So yes, she's a legend, but more than that, she's a survivor, a pioneer, a woman whose voice and presence have transcended decades. And even now, long after that midnight train left the station, the sound of her soul still lingers. But if Knight has had a really successful career, the same can't be said about her love life. The men in Gladys Knight's life. Gladys Knight has lived a life full of love, heartbreak, and resilience. Over the years, she's walked down the aisle 4 times, each marriage shaping her in different ways. Through it all, one thread remained constant: her unwavering devotion to love and family. Her first love story began when she was just 16. She married James Newman, an Atlanta musician who would go on to manage her group, the Pips. Their connection was rooted in a shared love of music and perhaps in the thrill of youth. At the time, Knight was just a girl chasing her dreams, already deep into her career. When she became pregnant, they married, but tragedy struck early. Her first pregnancy ended in a miscarriage while she was on tour, staying in a hotel room. That loss was one of many difficulties they would face. James Newman, as Knight later revealed in her 1997 autobiography, between each line of pain and glory, my life story, struggled with drug addiction. That struggle cast a long shadow over their marriage. Despite the turbulence, Knight stayed with him for 4 years. He moved out when she was just 20, but the divorce wouldn't be finalized until 1973. Even with all the pain, she referred to Newman as the love of her life. In her words, despite all the heartbreak and the chaos, he held a permanent space in her heart. He passed away sometime in the 1970s. Together, they had 2 children. Their son, James Gaston Newman III, born in 1962, followed his mother into the music business. Not as a performer, but as her manager. He had a family of his own, with 5 children. Tragically, he died in his sleep in 1999 from heart failure at just 37 years old. Their daughter, Kenya, born the following year, became a gourmet baker with 2 bakery businesses in Las Vegas. Like her brother, she also had 5 children, carrying on the family legacy. Knight's second marriage was to Barry Hankerson, a music producer she met in 1971 when he invited her and the Pips to perform at a Detroit charity event for sickle cell anemia. After her divorce from Newman, she wasted no time starting anew. In September 1974, they married. Barry already had a child from a previous relationship, and together, he and Knight welcomed a son, Shanga Ali. But what started with hope eventually spiraled into a bitter custody battle. When their marriage ended, Barry kept Shanga away from Knight for nearly 6 months, despite the court granting her custody. It was an emotionally grueling chapter in Knight's life. She wasn't just fighting for her son, she was fighting for her dignity. The only weapon he tries to use that he knows means anything to me is Shanga, she once said. Still, she refused to lash out publicly. I won't get ugly in public, she insisted. We don't need that. Barry filed for divorce in 1978 and then dropped it just 4 weeks later, claiming he still loved her and didn't want to destroy the marriage. But the damage was done. He tried to paint Knight as wealthier than she was, insisting they earned the same and accusing her of hiding assets. Even in the courtroom, things got heated. One of Knight's former lawyers claimed Barry swore at him and even got physical outside court. But through all of this, Knight stood her ground, fighting not just a man but a system, determined to protect her son and her sanity. By 1982, that marriage was behind her, and so were 2 divorces. Still, Knight wasn't closed off to love. In 1993, she became engaged to the charismatic motivational speaker Les Brown. The world saw them together for the first time at Maya Angelou's star-studded 65th birthday party, and from the outside, It looked like a perfect match. Knight showed off her diamond engagement ring, and they announced plans to marry on Thanksgiving. They finally tied the knot in a private Las Vegas ceremony on August 29, 1995. But just 2 years later, it was over. Brown filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. Yet he was gracious, saying he still loved her and always would. "We're parting as friends," he said, wishing her the best. And then came the fourth chapter. In 2001, Knight married William McDowell, a corporate consultant. After years of public battles and private heartbreak, she found peace. The two have been together ever since. When asked about love, Knight told SF Gate, "Love is what makes the world go around. I know it's a big cliché to use, but it is the absolute truth." Unlike her previous marriages, her relationship with McDowell has been blissfully low-profile and long-lasting. Knight, now in a stable and seemingly joyful union, opened up about how love was the one feeling everyone strives for. She said it best, "Nothing compares to love. It's what people chase, what gives meaning to everything." So, if we're asking who Gladys Knight truly loved, the answer is layered. She called James Newman, the man who broke her heart and battled addiction, the love of her life. That's not something you say lightly. But her current marriage seems to be the love that finally brought her peace. There's a kind of quiet depth in that. After all the drama, all the courtrooms and heartbreak, she found someone she could simply be with. Gladys Knight's love life hasn't been a straight line, but rather a deeply human journey through joy, pain, and ultimately, healing. And maybe that's the point. She never gave up on love, even when love hurt her most. Even though Knight fought her second husband to win custody of her son Shanga, Shanga would later go off rails, even testifying against his own mother in court. So, what exactly happened? Keep watching to find out. The real reason Gladys Knight sued Shanga Hankerson. In 2016, a scandal erupted that blindsided fans of Gladys Knight, and it didn't come from the stage, but from the kitchen. Her name had long been a staple in the music world, but in Atlanta, it was also stamped across a popular soul food chain, Gladys Knight's Chicken and Waffles. It sounded like the perfect mix, comfort food paired with a beloved music legend's brand. But behind the scenes, things weren't nearly as wholesome as the menu suggested. That year, the Georgia Department of Revenue came knocking hard. Agents raided all locations of Gladys Knight's Chicken and Waffles, along with the company's headquarters. The reason? Her son, Shanga Hankerson, who ran the business, was accused of stealing more than $650,000 in sales and withholding taxes owed to the state. By the time penalties and interest were added, the total ballooned to over $1 million. Authorities claimed that Shanga wasn't just making accounting errors, he was funneling money for his own personal use. And it got worse. When officials showed up with the intent to arrest him, he was nowhere to be found. Gladys Knight, though, she was in the clear. She wasn't suspected of any wrongdoing, nor was she involved in the business operations. Her name might have been on the front of the building, but legally and practically, that's about where her involvement stopped. In the aftermath, her spokesperson quickly stepped in with a public statement. Knight had merely lent her name to her son's venture, like any celebrity endorsement. She had nothing to do with the day-to-day operations, and now that things had gone south, she was focused on what mattered most, her family. The rep said she was doing everything she could to make sure the family had the guidance they needed to assess the damage and figure out a path forward. The restaurant chain had 3 locations in and around Atlanta, and despite the raids, the Georgia Department of Revenue said they didn't want to keep the doors closed forever. Their goal wasn't to shut the business down permanently, and they were working with Shanga's attorney to get things running again as soon as possible. But still, the damage had already been done. Then, things turned personal and ugly. After the scandal broke, Gladys didn't just want to walk away quietly. She filed a lawsuit against her own son, asking to have her name and image completely removed from the restaurant's branding. She wanted out, for good. But instead of responding to the lawsuit, Shanga stayed silent. So, the court clerk entered a default judgment in Gladys's favor. That should have been the end of it. Except, according to TMZ, Shanga's legal team pulled a shocking move. They allegedly tried to use her health as leverage. Gladys claimed her son's lawyer contacted her and threatened to go public with a claim that she had Alzheimer's if she didn't give them more time to respond to the lawsuit. It was a low blow, and she didn't take the bait. When she refused to play along, Changa fired back with legal documents accusing his own mother of having some form of dementia and lacking the mental capacity to make decisions. It was beyond dramatic. It was devastating. A mother and son locked in a legal battle, with private health accusations thrown into the public spotlight. Gladys didn't hold back. She responded firmly, denying the dementia allegations and accusing her son of trying to embarrass and harass her. She wanted the default victory to stay in place and made it clear she wasn't about to back down. And just when it seemed the story couldn't get any messier, there was more. Changa eventually turned himself in to the Clayton County Jail, according to the Georgia Department of Revenue. He was released later that afternoon on a $20,000 bond. It was a heartbreaking twist for fans who only saw the joyful image of a soul legend smiling next to a plate of fried chicken and waffles. The truth was far more complicated. The restaurant may have carried her name, but the scandal and the betrayal was something she never saw coming. And while Gladys Knight has long been known as the Empress of Soul, this chapter in her life was a tough reminder that even legends aren't immune to family drama, business fallout, or legal chaos. But if there's one thing Knight has always done, whether in music or in life, it's survive. But if you think the drama with her son was the only major pitfall in her career, then think again. The Super Bowl controversy. In January 2019, when news broke that Gladys Knight would be performing the national anthem at Super Bowl 53, it felt like a proud, full-circle moment. The Empress of Soul, back in her hometown of Atlanta, standing on one of the biggest stages in the world. It should have been pure celebration, but instead, it lit a firestorm. Not because anyone doubted her talent. Gladys has been a powerhouse for decades, but because of the timing. The NFL, at that moment, was already deep in hot water. Colin Kaepernick, the former 49ers quarterback who had knelt during the anthem to protest police brutality, had essentially been pushed out of the league. His peaceful protest had sparked a national debate about race, justice, and patriotism, and a whole lot of people were watching closely to see who would stand with him. Big names like Rihanna, Cardi B, and Jay-Z had reportedly turned down Super Bowl appearances in solidarity. So, when did Gladys Knight say yes to singing the anthem? Some people were not having it. Critics didn't hold back. On social media, there were posts accusing her of crossing the picket line. One tweet that got a lot of traction read, "Kaepernick lost his NFL career fighting for black social justice. Where is the solidarity?" Some fans felt like she was turning her back on the movement. To them, the anthem had become more than just a song. It was a political symbol, and performing it meant picking a side. But Gladys didn't flinch. She held her ground and released a statement through Variety and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. In it, she made one thing clear. She supported Kaepernick's message. She understood why he knelt, but she also felt like the anthem itself had been hijacked by the controversy, and she wanted to reclaim it. She said her goal was to give the anthem back its voice, to take it out of the middle of the culture war and make it mean something unifying again. She wasn't trying to silence the protest. She was trying to elevate the music beyond the noise. And she had a point. Gladys reminded everyone that she'd been in the trenches of the civil rights movement, long before hashtags and headlines. This wasn't just someone chasing a check or spotlight. She knew the weight of what she was walking into, and she believed in the power of her voice to bring people together. When Super Bowl Sunday finally arrived, she stepped out in a stunning all-white outfit, an elegant studded dress, and a dazzling headpiece that looked like something fit for royalty. She stood tall, proud, and centered, and when she sang those opening words, "Oh say, can you see?" it wasn't just a song, it was a moment. Her performance lasted 2 minutes and 1 second, 14 seconds longer than the betting world had predicted. But no one minded. The voice, the emotion, the power, it was pure Gladys. She didn't just sing the anthem, she felt it, and a lot of people watching felt it too. Media critics were impressed. Many praised her performance as one of the most emotional and impactful renditions of the anthem in years. It had soul, depth, and sincerity. Everything we expect from Gladys Knight. But public opinion? Still mixed. Some people couldn't separate the anthem from the controversy surrounding it. They felt her performance, no matter how beautiful, missed the bigger point. They called it tone-deaf, a betrayal, but others saw courage. They applauded her for walking a tightrope with grace, for standing in the fire and still choosing to sing, for trying to remind everyone that music can heal, even when the world feels broken. Throughout it all, Gladys never backtracked. She continued to acknowledge the importance of Kaepernick's message while also defending her belief that the anthem didn't have to be a symbol of division. For her, it was part of a healing process. She saw it as a call to unity, not silence. And it's worth noting, this wasn't just any Super Bowl. It was held in Atlanta, a city with deep civil rights roots. The pregame included a tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and his daughter, Bernice King, even participated in the coin toss alongside civil rights leaders. So, in a way, the entire event was walking that same line between honoring the past, reckoning with the present, and hoping for something better in the future. Gladys Knight didn't change the world with her anthem, but she made people talk, she made people feel, and whether you agreed with her or not, she showed up with grace, conviction, and that once-in-a-generation voice that's been moving hearts for decades. And while the public had divided opinions of the woman, there's one man who stood behind the woman and had her back through it all. The man Gladys Knight loved more than her husband. In 2022, Gladys Knight didn't hold back when she spoke about her fourth husband, William McDowell. She called him the love of my life, saying he had brought her a mighty long way. For Gladys, their bond is more than just romance. It's a real partnership. She handles the creative side, he handles the business, and together they move in sync. There's mutual respect, teamwork, and above all, peace. What sets William apart, according to Gladys, is how he understands boundaries, something people in her past struggled with. But with William, she said it's different. He's the love of my life. When I first saw him, I said, "Ooh, he's really cute. He's my manager." And just like that, it clicked. They first met back in 2001, when William was still working as a corporate consultant. Within just 3 months of dating, they got married in April that same year, and they've been together ever since. The couple now lives in Fairview, North Carolina, not far from the RHS Community Foundation, a center they built together in 2014. William, who's originally from Canton, North Carolina, has worn many hats. He's a songwriter and an author, and yes, he used to be a consultant before fully stepping into Knight's world. The Lovebirds even co-wrote a song together, "This Is Our Time," the same year they tied the knot. Gladys performed it at the opening ceremony of the 2002 Winter Olympics, and the song was featured on the official Light Up the Land 2002 Olympic Winter Games album. William later went on to write a Christian book titled The One: How to Grow and Thrive as a One While Feeding Your Soul and Impacting Others, which was released in 2021. Now, 23 years into their marriage, Gladys and William are still going strong. When asked about the secret to their lasting love, Gladys kept it simple: faith. "You have to always know that the Lord is going to make a way. We put Him first," she shared in a 2022 interview with Closer. "If you've got a problem and don't know how to do something, you have to look up. That's how we get through." They don't have any children together, but William has stepped up as a loving stepfather to Gladys' 3 kids from her previous marriages. Between them, they now share a big, beautiful blended family, 17 grandchildren and 10 great-grandchildren. And it's clear the grandkids absolutely adore William. "When I'm home, I have a house full of kids, and they're all over William, my husband," Gladys told Closer. "He is all about the kids, and they just love him to death. They love him the best, and he'll do anything to keep them on the right track." So, what's your favorite Gladys Knight song? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you're in the mood for more stories like this, click on the next video on your screen. You're going to love it.